All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about something that is becoming incredibly personal for every single one of us: artificial intelligence inside your doctor's office. Is this technology going to be a miracle cure, or could it become a new kind of malpractice?
I mean, really think about that question. We hear it all the time, right? That AI is going to completely change medicine, making it cheaper, faster, better, the whole 9 yards. But is that really the whole story? Today, we're going to break down the incredible promise and, yeah, the hidden dangers of letting a piece of code make life or death decisions. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the dream, the utopian vision, because the potential for AI to fix our ridiculously complex and expensive healthcare system is, well, it's absolutely staggering. Get this, $360 billion with a B. According to industry reports, that is the potential annual savings AI could bring to just the U.S. healthcare system. That's a massive number, and it's all driven by this idea of making everything in the system way more efficient.
And the promise is pretty simple. AI can do it better on almost every single front. You have research from places like Harvard suggesting AI could improve our health outcomes by as much as 40%, while at the same time cutting treatment costs in half. The whole goal is to leave behind the slow, expensive way we do things now and jump into a faster, smarter future.
So the potential is obviously huge. But what happens when the code, this thing we're told is perfectly objective, gets it completely and totally wrong? This is where the story takes a really sharp and, frankly, a pretty dangerous turn.
This quote from Dr. Faye Cobb-Payton just hits the nail on the head. You know, an AI is only as smart as the data you train it on, and it turns out the data we're feeding these incredibly powerful systems, well, it can be biased from the very start.
Just take a look at this. It's a perfect example of the problem. This is the Cancer Genome Atlas, a really critical dataset used to train medical AI. But look, over 82% of the data in it comes from white patients. So an algorithm that learns from this might get really good at diagnosing cancer in a white person, but what about everybody else?
And the bias isn't just racial, it's also geographical. A huge chunk of U.S. patient data comes from just 3 states. Think about that. How can an algorithm trained on data from big, coastal, urban centers really understand the health of a patient in, say, rural Mississippi, where the lifestyle, the environment, everything is completely different?
And this isn't some academic exercise. There is a very real, very human cost. We're talking about actual stories. A 9-year-old kid denied a prosthetic arm, a stroke victim getting pushed out of the hospital way too early. And in one of the most unbelievable cases, a lawsuit alleges United Health Group used an AI to deny claims that the company knew had a, wait for it, 90% error rate. 90. It's hard to even wrap your head around that.
So how in the world are these huge, life-altering decisions being made? Well, when you start to peel back the layers, you find that it often boils down to a single, secret number. A number that you and even your doctor might never, ever get to see.
It's called a risk adjustment factor, or a RAF score. And honestly, the best way to think of it is like a credit score, but for your health. An algorithm just gobbles up all your data, your diagnoses, your age, all of it, and spits out this one number. The higher that score, the sicker you're predicted to be, which then determines how much money your insurance plan gets for your care.
The process itself seems straightforward, but it's also pretty concerning. Your data goes in, a score comes out, and that score has a direct impact on your healthcare. But here's the real problem, and it's something groups like the ACLU have been shouting about. The actual formula, the math behind the score, is almost always a trade secret. It's a complete black box, which makes it nearly impossible for you or your doctor to challenge a bad decision.
And this all leads us to the central debate, right? Are these flawed algorithms actually better than flawed human judgment? Or are we just automating unfairness and putting it on an industrial scale?
Now, the argument for the machine is pretty compelling. Papers from places like Harvard Bioethics will tell you that computers don't have our human failings. They don't have egos, they don't get tired or have bad days, they don't play favorites. So in theory, they could make tough calls, like who gets a scarce ICU bed, with a kind of mathematical fairness a person just can't match.
But the counterargument is that we've just handed these incredibly powerful tools to a system that's already obsessed with profit, not people. And from this point of view, the algorithms aren't about making things more just. They're about maximizing revenue.
They turn healing into a cold, hard calculation, a zero-sum game between profits and a human life.
And, we can't just point the finger at the machines. The real problem often happens when you get this toxic mix of human pressure and automated systems. A ProPublica report, for example, found a Cigna employee who said they were pressured by their bosses to just deny cases. The AI becomes a shield, a way to do it faster and with less accountability.
Okay, so if we know that technology isn't going anywhere, but the system we have is full of problems, what's the path forward? How do we build something better, something more humane, that actually uses this tech responsibly?
Well, it seems like experts are starting to agree on a kind of checklist for fairer AI. First, and this is the big one, you have to use diverse representative data, period. Second, for any critical decision, you must have a human in the loop, always. Third, we as patients need transparency and a real way to appeal decisions. And finally, all of this needs to be supported by stronger government regulation and rules that just make the whole system less complicated. But beyond just fixing the code, there's another really powerful human-centered idea that works with the technology. It's called patient navigation. It's not about more tech, it's about more human connection. A trained navigator's one and only job is to be your guide, to help you cut through all the confusion and red tape to get the care you actually need.
And the results? They can be absolutely transformative. Look at this groundbreaking study from Harlem Hospital. Before they introduced patient navigation, the 5-year survival rate for breast cancer was just 39%. After they brought it in, it jumped to 70%. And getting diagnosed early went from a tiny 6% all the way up to 41%. That's a monumental, life-saving difference.
Which brings us to our final question. We know we can build algorithms to measure risk and to calculate cost. We're getting really good at that. But the real question, the one that truly matters, is a moral one. Can we build a system, and can we program our machines to value human rights and dignity above all else? That's the challenge ahead of us. Thanks for watching The Explainer.